So welcome to our webinar, which is how to feel great and prosper in this mind-based universe. And you'll see why I'm focusing on that. It's very, very important. People live their entire lives from the wrong point of view, the wrong attitude, the wrong idea. They wonder why their lives are very challenging. It doesn't mean that you won't be challenged when you live from the proper natural way, but you will be able to know why those challenges are arising and not project the cause of them outside yourself and therefore victimize yourself. So that's not what we want you to do. So let's look and see, because there are only 3 factors that you need to be aware of to give yourself a very, very bright future indeed. We are facing tumultuous times, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. Take any notes of what I'm talking about here by all means, and that will help you, because these sessions do contain a lot of valuable information. So we're going to examine all 3 factors, so you've got them in place, and this is going to put you ahead of the pack, which is where you need to be in this upcoming world, as you'll see. And the first thing we'll deal with is the realities of living in a mind-based universe, how to use your mind fully by awakening its deeper powers. We're going to look at the problem of beliefs, the deep, deep problem, and what they do is they encase you in a sort of concrete overcoat of conditioning, and people cannot get out of that. They find their lives are always restricted by that internal, unseen and unfelt, usually, contraction, entrapment, that kind of thing. And therefore it's absolutely vital to free yourself of this, because beliefs make your life. They allow you to use a certain amount of your powers, or they block you completely, perhaps, the minimalist idea. But what you want to do is to be really clear on whatever it is within yourself that is stopping you, that is sabotaging you, that is limiting you, that is causing you anxiety, fear, anything about not feeling great. If you're not feeling great, and I'm not talking about when you're overtired or stressed, but when you're not feeling great as the normal state that you should be in, then that is usually something to do with the belief structure that is going on within you. So that's the first thing we're going to be dealing with. The second thing is the shape of things to come. And this is our theme probably for this year. It has been touched on in previous years, but this is the horrors, the difficulties, the challenges of the workplace and society as a whole. It's very, very interesting. I've been studying intensely history from the last 100 years of why society is as it is, how we've all gone through various attempts to change our lives, the world, human society as a whole, right back through to prior to the Great Depression, the Great War, all that has taken place since then, as the society tries to work out the best way to live, and the people that have set up our society. It's absolutely fascinating. And where we are now positioned is that probably only about 20% of people will be needed to do the work. Technology will do the rest. And you have about 12 to 18 months, maybe 16 months now, before everyone else knows this. They're beginning to hear about it, but you need to get ahead of the wheel, ahead of the pack, and you don't want to be in a situation where suddenly in 12 months' time you're confronted with this on a daily basis and you haven't taken any necessary actions because you thought, oh, everything will be all right, that kind of thing. You don't want to do that. You want to avoid the traps and make sure you are earning enough income, that you have extra skills, everything's in place, so you can ride to the top and remain there. Because if you haven't developed an extra skill, at least one extra skill that is appropriate, I'll tell you what they're going to be, then you will be in a very challenging situation, because life has a really extraordinary habit of sneaking up on the deluded and misinformed and confronting them with reality. You don't want to be confronted with reality when it's too late to do something about it. So I'm giving you lots of warnings, lots of explanations, so that something will drip through and you'll be able to take those appropriate actions that you actually need. The third is how you can integrate your personal mind with the greatest opportunities in history. We are now facing the biggest transformation of human culture and society ever. It is so vast, so gigantic, so extraordinary, so challenging that unless you're prepared for it, it might overwhelm you. But if you know what's coming and you know what to do and you integrate your own mind with these opportunities, then you can set yourself up for the rest of your life if you do it properly. And really, because of the advances in the medical profession, you certainly need to realize that you're probably going to live till 100 years old in good health, if you have the money to pay for the treatments. Quite obviously, it's not going to be something you're going to get on Medicare or your insurance. This is pay at the time out of your own pocket. So that's worth earning more money for. So let's begin with the reality of living in a mind-based universe. Now, this is often news to people. The reason it's news is because science does not examine the causes of the universe. The science does not examine any invisible forces, such as mind, consciousness. They do examine energy, but they don't examine intelligence, and they don't examine creativity and those sorts of things, because they can't. It's not a criticism in any way. It's just the reality. Unless you can grab something and measure it, you can't do anything scientific in the sense of repeated experiments and this sort of thing. But do we deny that dreams exist, that thoughts exist, that images exist, that creative power exists, that consciousness exists? No, of course not. It does. All those things do exist, and they are the real tools that are there within you that you don't really use, and yet when you start to use them, then it is quite extraordinary. And what you need to do is to be able to dissolve those beliefs that are there, like the concrete overcoat I mentioned, and these are the walls that block you from these higher powers. You have the higher powers, you don't have to create them in some way, you don't have to go to the gym and build them up. They exist in full within you right now. And when you manage to unhook yourself from the overcoat of conditioning, let's call it, then you can access them. But the problem is that the overcoat of conditioning is so familiar, it's so long-term, that you have identified yourself with that. You believe you are your conditioning, you believe you are your personality, you believe you are your ego, as they call it in psychology, you believe you are the narrative identity, which is the new word for ego, new couple of words for ego, and it means the stories that you are telling yourself. When you start to dream, you can go through that little period where you're going between sleep and sound asleep and waking up, in other words, and you can feel the run of the stories. You start to see them in dream images, you know, that space just before waking and sleeping, and all sorts of things are running in tremendous power, tremendous force. And these are the stories, the millions of stories that are in there probably, because they come via your DNA as well, probably your whole animal nature, right back to an amoeba, you know, where we've all grown through these various forms, and they're running. So you're run by your stories. And the main stories that run you are those that have happened in your life, obviously, since your birth till now, the ones that impressed you the most. And what it means is that for many people, the reactions to their upbringing were so profound that deep down they had to protect themselves against psychological, emotional, and even physical assaults, or they had to bury very, very deeply their primal reactions, impulses, instincts, because they were socially and totally unacceptable. You don't want to snarl like a hyena at somebody who says something unpleasant to you, so you have to hold that down, even though within yourself, organically, you might have felt like that, that kind of thing, like a tiger perhaps, but you can't do it. So you learn to hold down all those animalistic responses, those animal spirits as they're called, and then you have to hold down everything that happened in your conditioning as well. So the human being is basically living in a repressed state, and that repressed state brings unhappiness. And that's why people look for unhappiness, because they don't realize that this is what they're dealing with. Because when you realize it's what you're dealing with, you can do something about it. You can process it all out. So we're going to look as we go through this and make sure you understand it very, very powerfully. So what's happened for you is your beliefs have built up via your conditioning about who you are, the beliefs of telling you stories about what you're capable of, and that is your life. And that is most people's entire lives, because they don't know there's a possibility of changing, let alone do anything about it. Now, what does that mean for you in a practical sense? What it means is that these stories are running, but they're stories that include or are told by other people to you. So when you're growing up, quite obviously, it's your parents or perhaps someone else influential was bringing you up. But whoever was the main figure or a couple of main figures in your life, they are behaving and expressing themselves not only to you, but as you're little, you're watching, you're seeing everything. That's what the mind does. It absorbs everything. So you take on board one or both of your parents very powerfully, and what you then do is that you attempt to create a life that is similar to theirs in some way or another. Now, you might have more money than they did, but that's not the point. The point is that you make all sorts of choices in your life which match the modes of expression that your parents were giving off. And the experiences might even be that life didn't fulfill them in any way whatsoever. Now, when you have that very embedded in you, quite obviously, what are you going to do? You're going to try consciously not to live that out, but subconsciously the drives are very powerful, and your parents may have been living out their parents and their parents for them and so on back through your ancestors. So it's a tremendously powerful instruction and story. And you do tend to, even if not immediately, usually the enthusiasm of youth allows you to change and live a different way. But then when the midlife crisis comes, 40 or 50 or whatever, or something medical happens, then you lose steam, you lose punch, you lose energy, and you find yourself in the same situation. Not exactly materially, but very close to it in many, many cases. So very few people have developed the ability to observe their own behaviors enough to see where they come from. In other words, they are on automatic. They are expressing the parents' behaviors. They're actually imitating the parents' behaviors. And what happens is that in a lack of consciousness about their behaviors, they can't see it. People can't see it. We all can't see it. We can't tell when we're in the midst of it that we are playing out mum or dad or some aspect of them. It's just going there. And when you do start to glimpse this, as one sometimes does, or somebody might point it out to you, it can freak you out and make you want to run a mile, literally. In fact, I knew a woman in her 50s who met her aunt. Her aunt lived overseas and she hadn't seen her for 20 years. The aunt was her mother's sister. And when the aunt saw her, she called, oh my goodness, she called out the mother's name, this woman's mother's name, her sister's name. You look just like her. This woman absolutely didn't want to know that. She didn't like her mother at all. And she, in fact, hated her and literally jumped up from the table saying, I've got to go, I'm out of here. Just ran off. She couldn't bear even to be looked at with this woman thinking, oh, you're so like your mother, you know. That's not what she wanted to hear. She thought she had totally become a different person to her mother, which of course is not the case. And this is what the arising of consciousness does for you. What happens is if you're faced with the reality of seeing a series of impressions that went into you playing out your life, you often reject them totally. And this gives people a lot of confusion. They grew up in a certain situation, they downloaded the beliefs according to it, they have made their choices in life based on those beliefs, they have created a life which matches those beliefs, and as long as they don't know that, they don't know what's come from the deep part of their mind, they can mosey through. But if they don't like their upbringing in any way, and there are many internal subpersonalities within you that don't like your upbringing, even though they do not reveal to you that it's your upbringing that's giving you the problem, this part of the mind just stays quiet and doesn't want to sort of rock the boat, then these beliefs will create your life. You won't know it. You'll think everything's fine. You might have made a lot of money even if they were poor or anything like that. But the reality is that you are living from your subconscious. And when you're living from your subconscious, you're living from your beliefs. And if you want to change your life, you've got to become more conscious. That's the only way that you will deal with it. Become more aware of yourself. Develop the awareness that allows you to at least have some separation to your behaviors rather than just going with them on automatic. At least be able to say at the end of the day, oh golly, well I was a bit like Uncle Joe or Mum or Dad or Brother Fred or whatever it is. At least get some glimmering of it. And in this history I've been studying of psychology as part of it recently, it is very interesting to see the number of different ways in the last 100 years that humanity has gone through many, many different explorations and many, many different layers to try to release the beliefs, to change their life, to free them from emotional blockages and all these sorts of things, or be controlled by outside forces. And really, they haven't understood. I'm going to tell you what the secret is in a minute, but the Western world has not succeeded. The Western psychological movements might have done great work with some therapeutic things, but they have not answered the core question, which is, what is the self? That's the key. They've tried to find it, they don't know it, they've come up with all sorts of lines, but it doesn't work. So look and see, are you playing out, or how are you playing out, whoever it was? I know another woman who found her own mother to be a steaming vat of poison, a really aggressive, emotionally violent, unable to control herself in the sense of loudness of behavior, a total narcissist, which means someone who always had to drag the attention to herself and crushing all around her with her aggression and dominating behaviors. And what a mother or a person, you probably know people like that, do is that they drain the energy out of everybody around them. So all their children, her children, had their energy drained out of them with her constant demands for attention. And what happens for them is that all sorts of defenses have to build as the vulnerable mind is trying to protect itself against this sort of monster. And what happens is that none of her children were able to have a normal relationship of any type whatsoever, without there being huge dramas in them. And these people grew up always being frustrated, finding fault with their partners, blaming them for various challenging events in their life. And all of these were sourced from their own beliefs, which they built up in the family home. And this particular daughter discovered, after facing various challenges, that the cause of them was that she was literally playing out her mother's behavior. She had no idea at all. It's all to do with imitation. See, when you're expressing yourself in your everyday life, you are like an actor who is imitating a character who they studied. Some actors use the technique of pure imitation. It does very well, they get Oscars for it and everything. So they use the ability to imitate as closely as possible somebody, particularly if they were a living person. And let's say if you take Johnny Depp in his hugely successful film series Pirates of the Caribbean, when you saw him interviewed, he admitted that he was imitating Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones rock group. And when you know that and you go to the movies and you see Pirates of the Caribbean, you could see there's Johnny being Keith Richards. And not only that, but in, I think it was the second or third Pirates of the Caribbean, they even brought Keith Richards into the film to play his father or his uncle or something like that. So they admitted it. It's a funny thing, and everybody loved to know Keith Richards is such an iconic figure that it was really quite amusing. And when you saw Meryl Streep playing Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, she imitated her so perfectly that she won an Oscar for the role. Now, that ability to imitate is a consciously deliberately developed ability, and some people are better than others from start. But this is what we do throughout our whole lives. You are imitating someone or several people during the various different parts of your life, usually the parents or parental figures. Now, these parental figures, or the influential person, whichever it was, lives inside you, and you imitate them and their different sub-personalities, because everybody has a number of sub-personalities. So your mother or father might have been very happy in some parts of their life, very confident in others, but very doubtful in another part, or hopeless at sport or physical activity, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You will find that you can imitate, you can play out, like Meryl Streep, exactly the behaviors that they expressed. So that's just one example of mind-based creation that dictates your life experiences. Belief is the thing. If you can realize that the beliefs, which are the stories, which are your identity, and that is made up of other people you're imitating, then you've got a chance to develop enough self-consciousness to reach your true self, find your true purpose, and be able to create the life of your dreams. If you can't do that, if you do not invest the time in practicing these consciousness techniques, you have no other option but to repeat the past forever. And the past you will repeat are those things you've imitated, because that's all that's in there. And this is why true self-development, not all the stuff that the West has developed, because it hasn't worked yet. I don't think they will. They've got to find the real key, which is what we're doing. If you don't do this, then it's just going to be, moving the deck chairs on the Titanic, as people like to say. So let's look at the universe now and look at this universal mind and find out how the universe creates its forms from within its own gigantic intelligence. That's what we call the universal mind. Now, of course, we cannot grasp with our small brains exactly what this is and how it works, but we can get an idea of it by examining our own ways of creation. So how you create the various events of your life is very, very similar to how the universe does it, but on a grand scale. The universe is huge, obviously. So when you develop the necessary consciousness to be able to absorb and observe your inner world, you can see how the events of your life appear, first of all, within yourself in some form or another. Now, this is really strange. People talk of déjà vu, which means already seen. And you have a déjà vu experience. I'm sure you've had one, I've had a few. When you have them, you think, but I've lived this before. How did that come about? I know what's going to happen. This is déjà vu, already seen. Somewhere in your consciousness, you have played it out. You have written the blueprint, or the blueprint has arisen from your own melee of beliefs and things that have happened to you and all that. And what it means is that that melee of information forms itself based on your conscious choices as well into ideas about how you want to live and what you want to happen. Most people live it out of the subconscious. They don't know, they're just living out the past. You can change it for yourself, and we'll go through that in a moment too. So take that the events of your life start in seed form within your mind at some level or other. Maybe you have a little dream, or you have a premonition dream. That's something that gives you a hint of the power that you have within yourself. Imagine if you had control of this power, how different your life would be, which of course is the point of what we're doing here. Now, what you find is that as you start the process of observing your inner world, the deeper layer after meditation, in other words, then these little events will appear, not in full detail, but just a sense of a broad creation taking place. And this is what great psychologists do when they examine your dreams, or they even analyze you. They can pick up, these wise people, the subtle forces that are forming into patterns that become the choices that you take, and therefore the life experiences that you live. So you start to get a sense of knowingness. Consciousness comes, of course, from knowing. So the consciousness that you have is a knowingness. And when you develop and hone this and sharpen this tool, what you find is that you can have the ability to know what's going to happen. I've had a number of people over the years come to me and say they have the experiences of knowing things are going to happen for people, other people, and even in their own life. And sometimes it becomes frightening because they have premonitions of people being killed in car crashes and things like that. And it's terrifying for them. They don't want to know. And they ask me, how can I turn it off? That's what they come for. Most people ask, how can I turn it on? But some ask, how can I actually turn this off, this ability? It's a natural ability. And when you start to grow this ability by removing beliefs, etc., then what you find is that you can know what's coming. But not only that, not only can you know what's coming, which is a shocking realization in itself, but you can start to do it as well. You can start to use the mind stuff to create something in your life, and that's the fun. That's when the fun starts. It is a great shock because, excuse me, because people don't realize that life is projected from within you rather than received from outside yourself. But this is the surface realization. That's a big wake-up call to many people, because they suddenly think, hang on a sec, I've been thinking that life happened to me all these years. I had no idea I had some ability to change things. Yes, you have. Yes, you can do it. And develop the necessary inner skills, beginning with self-observation, and cause the events and circumstances, or at least some of them, or parts of them, to come into your physical experience. So first, turn within. You'll have to deal with the roller coaster of the monkey chatter personal mind, which pulls you this way and that. It pulls your attention, in other words, this way and that, and round, and you sit down to close your eyes, and then 20 minutes pass, you come out of it, and you think, oh, I've just sat there for 20 minutes, and my mind's just been all over the place. Don't worry, that's quite normal. That's the stress being released. It will pass when you add the methods, of course. So this is the challenging part, okay? Unless you've been given the methods, of course, then it's much easier. So when you go through that roller coaster, you then will reach the mind space. This is where you can create and play out the experiences that you want to happen. In other words, you consciously dream it by creating all the details that you can. There are tools to do this. Some of them I'm sure you know. But the most important thing is that they are already within you. You do not have to make the tools. They are there within you. You just have to understand them. Now, naturally, as you try to change anything, and this is what puts most people off, makes them feel they can't do it, is that you will be faced with your conditioning. you will be faced with the belief structures that are quite hard to get through in some or many cases. But the deeper you can relax, the easier it is to bypass them and sort of go in underneath, because they are only a sort of module inside your mind. They're not the whole mind, even though your attention is drawn to them and on they go. You want to sort of slip underneath, if you like. The real goal for you is to reach the heart space, which is the center of your being, that space around the breastbone. You can hear the physical heart beating. It's not that which you're going for. It's called the heart space, which is the center of your trunk of your body, and that's where you're heading for. If you can reach that place, that's the key. Now, don't be looking to be peace and love or romance or anything like that when you're going to the heart space. What you're going to the heart space for is to become centered in your true self, which is what? A source of power or force. You're looking for power, creative power. That's what you're after. A lot of people look for love, and of course love is in the Anahata chakra, the mid chakra again in the same area, but you're looking to go deeper than that, because the force, when it's experienced as a free flow, is experienced as divine love. But if you look for love, the chances are you're going to get lost in romance or romantic love in some way. Much better just to go for the force, and it will fill you with what really love actually is. So as you dismantle the belief structure, now you start to feel what you really are at depth. And then when you get to this place, and you'll glimpse it in the beginning and then longer and longer periods, then you get to it. Then what you would be is like a movie writer and director who will think up a series of scenes. If they're writing a movie or making a movie, lots of scenes connect together to give the whole story. So what you want to do is to create scenes in your life that will make up the experiences. So a lot of people, when they start personal development, they do one scene, like the new house they can buy or rent or whatever it is, or the new car or the holiday or whatever it is. They have that one scene. When you're really doing this in a professional way, when you've understood it and things are working for you, then what you do is you create a series of scenes. So you learn to consciously and deliberately create an experience which then becomes a real deja vu when you live it out. See the difference? One scene, it's where you begin, absolutely unavoidable, absolutely necessary, but you can create more. And what you find is that the people who have great success in life have usually thought through several scenes in their life to create whatever it is that they're living out. Particularly these big business moguls, people of that nature, they think all the way through, like Elon Musk, because now he's planning to go to Mars and live on Mars and die on Mars. He says, I want to die on Mars, but not on impact. So he wants to make sure his rocket doesn't crash. But these people think these things through. That's the only difference between them and you. And that is that they create the scenes they want to live out. They don't necessarily know it in the way that we're discussing it here, but they know it works. So that's the same for you, that you are the movie writer and director of your life, and you want to really look into that very, very carefully. This is what a conscious human being can do. So these are the natural creators, and that's what you are already. You just haven't used it at all. So these life creation powers, which you hardly ever used, they sit there within yourself. They exist within you. They are the keys and the means of radically improving your life, and removing that single block that entrapped you forever is the key. That single block, I'm going to deal with that in a moment, but I just want you to understand where you are, because you are entering one of the most challenging times in history that we're going to face. And what we want to do is to know how to remove that big block. So we'll get to that in a moment. What we now need to know is that we have been taught that we have no powers over the external world. apart from physical actions and behaviors. This is wrong. You have your internal power and you're going to need it now. And why you're going to need it is, once again, as we've covered previously, some parts of this, is that in the shape of things to come, we're in a very serious time. There's no doubt, if you follow the media, you can see that. Things are radically changing. Things are getting worse for a lot of people. Others are putting their head in the sand. They don't want to face the reality that's coming. Please don't do that. It's not a good idea whatsoever. So I'm just going to give you a very clear, up-to-date picture. Won't take a moment, but it's really important, because right now, if you do this properly and you mix it with your clearing of beliefs and being able to impress what you want on the mind stuff, this is the time for the biggest opportunities to generate financial security for you. Knowledge is the key, but here are the facts. Now, what's happened, as we've mentioned before, millions of jobs have been permanently removed from the economy forever. There's no use waiting for their return. They're not coming back, because we know the robots, artificial intelligence, technology, and everything else is doing this. Why we need to keep it in mind is it's speeding up every single day, faster and faster and faster and faster, and you must be alert to this. For instance, a human welder, one of the big mass jobs, earns around $30 an hour. These are American figures, or Australian as well, while a robot costs $10 an hour to do the same job. What's going to happen? Very obvious what's going to happen. People thought that farming was a great long-term job. Well, what's happened there is that food production, the manufacture of food, is being taken over by the huge drug and biotech companies. They are going to be producing meat tissues in the laboratories, dramatically reducing the price of cultivation. They'll also produce cereals, all sorts of things on a mass scale. And what's going to happen, and you might think, how do they do that? Well, they get the stem cells of beef or lamb or chicken or fish or whatever, and they make it in gigantic slabs, 20 meters long and 4 meters high or whatever it is. And then machines, robots, cut it into little slabs, make it look like hamburgers or cuts of meat or whatever, and then they're sold as meat. They are meat. They're stem cells. They've got exactly the same nutrients and probably a lot less, dangerous bacteria or antibiotics in them. They're completely organic in a way. So this is what's coming, and the cost of growing a cow to do this, might be $1,000, but they can probably make this kind of stuff for $100. And therefore, what's going to happen to the farms? Goodbye. This is what's going to happen. So they're concerned in many, many countries, the third world countries, because it could literally wipe out hundreds of millions of small farmers, and it will be completely catastrophic for them. It could wipe out the whole economies of small countries, because a lot of them just have a couple of crops that they sell on the world market. It could throw the population into unemployment, as well as causing runs on the banks with the inability to repay loans. So the banks could go, the economy could go. It could be a complete collapse of the social order. And it's the same with factory workers. Very soon, robots will replace over 90% of factory robots. There is hope in many that there'll be service sector jobs appearing, but that's also a fallacy, because artificial intelligence thinking machines will take over those as well, simply because they're more efficient. They will learn to talk like you and I talk. They will learn to have a vocabulary greater than ours, and you'll be able to interact with them as if they were another person. So those service jobs will be better served by these highly trained and programmed robotic computers. They won't take them all, maybe 50%, maybe 90%, that kind of thing. For instance, a human bank teller can handle up to 200 transactions a day. They work 30 or 40 hours a week, get a salary anywhere around the $20,000 mark, plus fringe benefits, coffee breaks, vacations, sick time. In contrast, an automatic teller can handle 2,000 transactions a day, works 168 hours a week, and costs $22,000 a year to run, and doesn't take coffee breaks or vacations. So that's the bank tellers. Another endangered species are librarians. Who would have thought that? The web and AI, artificial intelligence, will take over their jobs. There are 150,000 librarians in the US, and they reckon that they can be reduced by 90%, leaving only machine supervisors. McKinsey, the huge company, business advice company, say in manufacturing, 59% of activities could be automated, and that includes 90% of the welders, cutters, metal workers, and all those kinds of things. The mainstream working class jobs, in other words. Finito. In food service and accommodation, cleaning, that kind of thing, 73% of the work could be performed by machines. In retailing, 53% of the current jobs could be lost. And also, when the computers can talk properly, like a human being, 66% of jobs in finance, administration, and insurance could be replaced. So many people will lose well-paid full-time work and be unable to find similar work. And they will be forced to settle for a job at 10% of their original pay, probably doing it part-time as well. Most jobs, 50% of them, can be broken down into a series of repetitive or straightforward tasks, and they will go. Therefore, just to sum it up now, VW, Volkswagen, say that by 2025, and this will be earlier now, 25% of its new cars will be electric, which will require far fewer workers to manufacture. You don't need such a complex car. When it's electric, it's much, much less engines and things like that. And they plan to remove tens of thousands of jobs simply because the electric vehicles have fewer parts than fuel-driven vehicles. The transfer to driverless and electric vehicles will remove 40% of US small cars. Now, think about that. 17.5 million sales in 2015 to about 10 million 2030. That is 7.5 million lost, about $2 trillion for the economy. And cars on the roads due to driverless vehicles will drop from 250 million to 100 million. That's a lot, 150 million cars gone, and therefore the number of car assembly plants will go as well. The US auto industry currently employs 7 million people in part suppliers, manufacturing, dealerships, etc. They will go too. We've talked about the truck drivers previously, 4.6 million truck drivers in the US alone, 234,000 taxi drivers. They will go as well as the driverless trucks and cars come in. Caring jobs will increase, as will anything that requires a human touch. But these are, with few exceptions, very low-paying jobs, and as competition increases for them, that will force the amounts down even lower. Everyone thinks supermarkets, I'll get a job in the supermarket, but supermarket packing and stacking jobs will go too. A recently invented robot melon picker can smell when a fruit is ripe for taking, and it can pack even soft fruits for supermarkets. It's just like a hand in the air. You see it was on Google News, hands there, picking up the things and stacking all the boxes. So no need for anybody. So there's going to be an elite. Wealthy owners and executives, scientists, engineers, software analysts, biotechnology researchers, PR specialists, high-end lawyers, investment bankers, financial and tax consultants, some architects, marketing specialists, film producers and editors, art directors, publishers, writers, editors, these kinds of things. Now, unless something is done, the new human workerless society, i.e. society without workers, will be experienced as mass unemployment. This will give rise to quiet desperation, to quote Thoreau, and social upheaval. What the elites have done always in history and now is crowd control. Because what happens is that when people form crowds, something happens in the psyche, and if there's any spark to the crowd or any negativity in the crowd, that can run through like a virus through the whole crowd very quickly, and they turn into a violent mob. It's called the herd mind. It's what dictators control people through. And when the herd mind starts, they can't listen to rationality or reason, and they smash up shops and burn cars and do all these sorts of things. And so the elites have always wanted to and have arranged life so that everybody does not get into mobs and crowds. Well, you see what happens in football matches and the football crowds that can become very, very violent. So this is what you are going to be facing. This is what's coming. And let's look at the main block that you've got to deal with, because I give you these pieces of information about the economy. It's really important for you. Do not ignore it. Please do not ignore it. This is coming like a tidal wave. It'll be as effective as a tsunami to people in their lives. They will not know what's hit them, and if they haven't already got the boat launched on top of the house, so to speak, it's not going to be pretty. It really is not going to be pretty. So you want to start to think, what is my other skill? What is it? What am I going to do? Do I want to end up a bag lady or a tramp? Just like in the Great Depression, people would put their swag on their back and walk up the coast hoping to find work, or inland on the farms and so on. Well, of course, the farms will be run by robots, so there won't be jobs there. So what you have to think about is, how can I prepare myself for this? I must get the knowledge, I must get the information, I must become someone who is prepared so that it's not going to be a shock when it comes. I'll have seen my way out, or whatever it might be. I will have prepared myself. So what stops you? Quite possibly is a belief or a parental imitation that wants to see you go down. You realize this? Many people's parents, 90% of parents, have come from families who were challenged and went under, in the grandparents in the Great Depression, the war, etc., World War II, all those challenges economically, revolutions, all sorts of things all over the world. And there is, in many people, a tremendously powerful selection of beliefs, which is, you are going down. I'm going to take you down because mum and dad were down, or granddad was down, or you've been too high, or you could have a critic sub-personality in there saying, you think you're so clever, I'm going to show you you're not. This is just how the mind works. It's bizarre. You can hear these critic voices inside your head, and you need to get those out and clear yourself of those kinds of things so that you can succeed. This is the best time in your life to succeed. Right now, what's happening now, the opportunities are phenomenal. Just on the web as a part-time business, run a little something on the side. It's extraordinary what can happen. I heard of a woman yesterday up here in Byron who did a little social media course, and she managed to create for her site over 300,000 followers, fans, whatever they're called. And she sold them products, became extraordinarily wealthy, just an ordinary person out of the street off the bat, you know. So this is the time. You've got this window now. People haven't realized that they need to do something different, so they won't do anything different. But once they realize they have to do something different because they don't have a job and they've got to eat and pay the mortgage or the rent, then they start to do things. And that's when, in about 12 to 18 months' time, the flood will be on. So get in quick. Start to think and put this at the top of your actual agenda. So let's look at the most important block that you have to get over. It'll take just a minute or two to explain it to you, and you need to get it. And what it is this. You have to get over it. It's tied in with your beliefs. It is the resistance to you becoming a powerful and creative person. Now, this is deeply embedded in your mind. It is a subconscious obstruction of tremendous power. Most people do not know it exists within them, nor do they have the wherewithal to dissolve it. So what is most important for you in your personal development work is to identify what this is and then consciously and deliberately let it go. You self-examine, self-observe. You know whether you've got it by examining your life. Do you ever feel anxiety, doubt, fear, guilt, any of these kinds of low energy emotions of any type? Do you feel negative? Do you ever have a voice inside your mind saying, oh, you could never do that? These kinds of things are the block to being powerful, because at source, at the essence of your being, your heart is the source of power and force as well, of course. So look and see, do I have any repeating loops in my life where I'm just playing out the past over and over again in my relationships or my job or my financial life or whatever it might be? And things might go away for a while and everything seems to be going well, and then it comes back in again, if you have that. Or do you feel that you've got invisible walls around you that you can't break out of them and live the life you really want? If there is that feeling of frustration, of not knowing what your purpose in life actually is, or why you're here, what you're meant to be doing, those kinds of things as well. Do you feel resistance to taking new actions that could bring you a far better life experience? So all these things come from one source, and that is your resistance to power and success. And therefore, now that the wheels are falling off the economic model for many, many people, you need to know how to slip through the door before it closes. And there are two things that you need to know. Your mind is your real power. You want to make sure you clean that up, get rid of those beliefs, dissolve them. And number two, that you have the skills that are there ready for you to take advantage of what's coming, to build the extra string to your bow, as I like to call it, and use your mind to cause life to bring to you whatever it is that you want. And everybody needs to be able to do this. And there is only one journey in life, really, quite frankly, and that is from victim to creator. It's taking place within every individual, and you only become a creator by activating more of your mind's powers. That's really, really important. So this is what you need to do. This is what life offers you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I will explain to you the new course that's starting tomorrow and tomorrow evening. And the new course is called Unconditional Prosperity. I did have the one-to-one trainings available. They all sold out, so they've gone until next time. So if you did miss out and wanted to do it, do write me an email and I'll put you on the waiting list. So what we're going to do in the Unconditional Prosperity is give you all the information that you need, number one, to remove that block to becoming a powerful and successful and creative person. And number two, detaching yourself from any beliefs, from wherever they've come from, that limit you from being in touch with your true power. So this is a subconscious mind process, number of processes actually. You need to understand it and do some methods, processes I'm going to give you to do. And you're going to learn to look inside your mind and see how it creates the blueprints for your life experiences. The mind forms, in other words, and you want to discover and dissolve the old belief patterns that are limiting you. You may even find that your dream world will start to communicate with you. That is very useful. It can easily lead you astray, but there are ways that you can lay out your dreams and get some really good information as to see what it is that you're creating. Because let's face it, isn't it a good idea to know what's coming, at least in some form or another? You might develop the sense part of knowing the future where you know, oh, I better be careful of that, or yes, that is the right thing for me to do. That's a very, very good thing. And I've had tens of thousands of people come to my various live seminars and use these kinds of methods and had wonderful, fantastic actually improvements in their life. And I don't know why I was able to do that actually, by the way. It was really funny. I just had the urge to do it. Isn't it funny? I had this belief I could do it, and the urge to do it, and so I just stood up and did it. I knew nothing about business and all that sort of stuff. I just wanted to speak out what I knew and I was excited about, and you know, it worked really, really extraordinarily well. So what happens for you when you start to work with your belief structure and you start to free yourself of this crushing and lockdown of your power, is that tremendous synergy starts to happen in your work. Strange coincidences come your way. People contact you. You do the work. You'll face the roller coaster of challenges, but when you're doing it properly, you're moving ahead all the time, and life likes to come. The superconscious comes in and gives you bonuses every now and again. So you need to understand that something entirely different is going on in life, and you want to make sure that you are, literally on the right side of the bread when it's being buttered. You don't want to miss out. So this is how you do it. You need to reskill yourself once you understand the belief structures. Now, in the Unconditional Prosperity course, I'm going to give you the complete belief dissolution mechanism, detachment mechanism, that will allow you to free up and express and feel your true power. This is what makes the difference. You feel much, much better. You find that you have more energy, more confidence, more self-esteem. You haven't done anything in the outside world. It just arises naturally because that is your natural state. So I'm going to help you awaken those particular parts of your nature which are so important for you to have, because you're going to need every single arrow in the quiver with what's coming up. And these things I'm going to give you are the ultimate, the icing on the cake, so you can let go, dissolve away those beliefs, and you will be able to use the creative power that you release to come up with ideas for what you can do in money earning as a second string to your bow. Included in this course, not only is the whole dissolution of beliefs and freeing of your real creative power, is that I'm going to detail very clearly. You're going to know more than 90% of people in business. It doesn't take a lot to learn. I've been looking at it very intensely. I break it down in simple steps for you. But the way that income is being generated is changing. There are certain skills you need absolutely, you can't avoid, that regardless of what happens with the robots and the artificial intelligence, these skills will be the best ones. You don't want to be in that intermediary gap of what's called the government waiting to create the UBI, the Universal Basic Income, which is what's going to have to happen. They're going to have to give people money, something a bit better than the dole, just to keep a roof and food. That's what's coming. It's not going to be very nice, I can assure you. I mean, would you really like to live on the dole for the rest of your life? No. So you have to develop these extra skills, and you can with the web. There's so much blue sky. You make sure you choose something with blue sky. Don't choose something which has a limit to it. Choose something that has infinite possibilities, at least, Even if you write a book that sells well, you can live off that. It's amazing what you can do with these kinds of things. So what you want to do is to do the research. I'm going to teach you how to research, see what you know. We're going to give you a questionnaire so you can find out what is it that might have come up when you were 7 years old that you just buried again. There's all sorts of things inside you, natural abilities that are sitting underneath the concrete overcoat. So we remove the concrete overcoat, we show you how to do that, and then these old ideas that you never thought of or didn't even know you had those talents and abilities will start to come to the surface. So you learn to do that, and then you learn the most important things of all. All money making relies on 3 skills: product choice, marketing and promotions, and advertising. That's it. Now, these 3 things have become very simplified in today's Facebook world and the web world, and I'm going to give you the absolute latest, most powerful information, some of which has worked for 100 years perfectly, out of the mouth of the man who formed the consumer society almost 100 years ago, the one who said this is what we're going to do, his cohorts, and he set it up. They ran the government, the big businesses, everything, these guys. These were the real elite, the behind-the-scenes elite. And I'm going to show you how he did it, how everybody since him has done it, who have been massively successful, what you need to know, what you need to do, and I'll give you those skills that you can learn very easily, very quickly. We'll learn them in the course. I'll show you how to deepen your knowledge if you want to specialize in something else. That'll be part of it, but it is not a gigantic learning curve at all. If you can run a stall at a village market, you can do this, because the whole economy is just a big village market, and you're not looking for stunning things, but what you're looking for is the language, what to say, what to write, what to communicate, how to serve a customer, how to give people what they want, in other words, and a whole list, not a long list, but a whole list of absolutely essential steps. So I'm going to teach you those as well in the Unconditional Prosperity course, so that when you have the beliefs sorted out and you have the mechanisms, the money-making mechanisms, then you have the whole thing. You're going to understand problem solving, creative thinking, very, very important. You weren't taught these things at school. You're going to learn how to read your life, what is coming, what are you projecting out there, how to avoid negative things happening to you, dislodging you from your success path. That's very, very important. I'm going to teach you how you can create dozens, literally dozens of products that you can build a whole collection of. You don't have to be a brilliant person or know something or anything like that. I'm going to show you what it is. It's much, much easier. You give people what they want is the secret, obviously, but I'm going to show you how you can, in no more than a few days, create a course that you could charge $97, $197, $297, $500, $1,000, or whatever you like. You can do coaching with it as well, and you want to create yourself into someone who has multi-skills, and you will be able to create income for the rest of your life. This is what the Unconditional Prosperity course will give you, how to give yourself the skills so that you can survive very well in comfort for perhaps the next 3, 4, 5 decades. Who knows, depending on your age, what it's going to be, because you're going to need it. Believe me, everybody's going to need this. So this is what we have, and the course, I'm going to give you a link for it if you want to get it. The course is called Unconditional Prosperity, and the fee is $440 or 3 payment option. And you might think, golly, is that a lot of money? No, because if you do this properly, you could make 50 or 100,000 a year from this knowledge. Would that be worth it? If you could make $50,000 from a $440 investment in yourself, is that a good deal? It is a very good deal, believe me. And this is something that will last you not for a year, but for 30 or 40 years, because I'm giving you the fundamental skills that everybody needs.